No, 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 no. As the gaming industry continues to evolve and change at a rapid pace, primarily forced on by Microsoft themselves as they try to shoehorn their way through the industry and making changes they see is necessary, it seems others are not far behind and are keeping a close eye on what Microsoft is doing. Last year in February, when Microsoft announced that they were putting 4 games on PlayStation and that was it until they see what that meant for the business, people took those 4 games as gospel. A lot of PlayStation fans mocked Xbox fans by saying it's not just those 4 games, the whole slate is going. And as you know, fast forward a year later, that's pretty much what's on the table right now. As more and more games are going over, Phil Spencer has repeatedly said that no game is off the table and more games will be going to other platforms as they look to make money. This is no longer a case of console warring, this is a case of a business. And of course, PlayStation fans took their lap of victory and were cheering and joyfully, jesting at the Xbox fans while they sat there, some annoyed at the direction Xbox has gone, others immediately adopting what Microsoft is doing and being full on board, whereas me, I'm kind of stuck in between. I get the direction that they're going in, I don't like some of it, but it is what it is. Of course, a lot of this was down to copium and hopium, and a lot transpired within that year, but it seems the tables are slightly turning, and Sony has been keeping a close eye on Microsoft and looking at the amount of revenue that can be gained. And well, their first push into PC wasn't the only thing that they were settling with. Of course, they haven't effectively released anything on Xbox, but technically, with Microsoft and the Steam partnership heating up, they won't have to, because by default, those games will be on Xbox anyway via the PC structure. And well, I had a whole debate on that in my stream yesterday. The VOD is up, go check that out. But what's happening here is quite interesting, and I find it, they were calling it the 7 stages of grief for Xbox fans as more games were going. And what's happening now is exactly the same thing. The only difference is Sony is doing it in such a slow pace that they're gradually getting their fans accustomed to it. Rather than the sledgehammer approach that Microsoft went down, Sony is doing it slowly, and you're seeing a lot of people, including this William R. Aguilar, but there's more. But this one stood out the most, where they're coming up with, the utmost amazing mental gymnastics to try and justify why this is not the same. Newsflash, if you port your game, any game that is a first-party game, to other platforms, you are a multi-platform publisher. That really is the way it goes. That's the rules of the law. Was Microsoft a multi-platform publisher back in 2016? Yes. Now, had it have remained within the ecosystem and not on Steam back in 2016, and the games weren't actually on Steam, they were stuck within the Xbox app, that would have been different. But the moment those games went to Steam, that was the end of it. It was no longer an ecosystem because Steam is not in the Xbox ecosystem. So fast forward now, and we're seeing the same thing. Lots of excuses. I mean, Reforge decided that he was going to spend 15-20 minutes creating all these weird and wonderful mental gymnastics scenarios that were basically saying that, just because Sony is porting their first party IPs, it is not the same. My dude, it is exactly the same. And no matter how much you want to say or deny it, really, all you're doing is
you are coping and seething. You just can't accept what you're seeing.
Of course, we come back to this post, and originally it was MLB, but that was forced upon them. It twisted their arm. Then it was Lego Horizon, which we've all seen with Nintendo, that you can make it exclusive to one platform, but apparently they were forced into it. And now we're seeing 4 PlayStation IPs, including Freedom Wars, going over to the Nintendo Switch. This clearly indicates that they are a third-party publisher, but as long as it doesn't go to Xbox, it seems that means that they are not a third-party publisher.
You are coping and seething.
Now make that make sense. Now this is as far-reaching as you can cope as you can get, right? They say Nintendo is their competition, but now they're saying Nintendo isn't a competition. So all that time that they were complaining about console sales and how everyone was talking about Sony and Microsoft only, but no, you had to add Nintendo because they were direct competition. But apparently now Nintendo and PC aren't competition, which begs the question, why are you crying if those games are going to go over to Xbox's PC? You know, at the end of the day, why are you crying? But you can see the second thing, these games are being published by Bandai Namco, not PlayStation. They are PlayStation first-party IPs that Sony is licensing to other companies. End of story. It doesn't matter how you want to sugarcoat it. It is done. Lego Horizon, he's saying, and MLB don't count because they are... It does count. You dictate what your IP does. It absolutely counts. This, they have now entered the denial phase that Xbox fans were in some time ago. They are going through the exact process. And you know what? PlayStation's games are going to go everywhere. Not just these games. This is just a slow way to get them used to it. They are all going to realize slowly but surely that this is where it's going. And there's one person who's actually said this from the PlayStation camp and has been actually turning around to their own community and telling them that you're all starting to sound like Xbox fans. And that is King Fresh. Now, regardless of how you feel about that guy, he's turning around and telling them that Sony is doing the same thing. And you're all just letting it happen without fighting back. He's the only one that I've seen that's openly said. But look at this guy. These IPs, it doesn't matter whether they're dead. These are just the craziest mental gymnastics that you can get. They are trying to find any justifiable reason to try and say, these are the reasons why PlayStation isn't going third party. My dude, if you are releasing your games, this is the basic definition. Only on PlayStation, you are a first party publisher. If you start releasing your games, your IP on other platforms, as well as your own, day and date, you are a third party publisher. I mean, let's just go back to the whole PC situation, right? Do you remember that they said there will be no single player games at all on PC? Only live service games. Then the live service games went day and date. And then they said, right, with the first party games, we're going to have like a 2-3 year cadence. So once the games have done what they need to do on PlayStation, they'll be going out to other platforms so they can make more money. Do you remember? So Phil Spencer said the same thing. Pretty much carbon copy. And then from 2-3 years, it's gone down to 2 years and then to 1.5 years. And that date of it going is cutting down. They also said no day and date, but we're seeing remasters, reboots, remakes are all coming day and date. Now, regardless of how you want to look at it, a reboot is a brand new game because it's being done from ground up. Siren is coming day and date. Third-party contracts that are money hatting are coming day and date. I guess they're going to stop that once the games are available on Xbox by default. Anyway, there'll be no point. But you can see here that my dude is literally going out of his way to try and show people this is ridiculous. The fact that you have to go down this route proves that you are literally trying to...
You are coping and seething.
And find any excuse, loophole under the sun, when the bottom line is, if you release your first party games, you are a third party publisher. It is exactly the same. Sony is watching what Microsoft is doing. The shareholders are watching what Microsoft is doing. And the more money Microsoft is making, the more they're looking. I mean, look at this comment down here. Sony also said that smaller AA games will release on Nintendo consoles in order to attract their fan base towards PlayStation. I wonder who else said that in the past. Oh right, it was Phil Spencer. And how did that work out? Do you genuinely think that that's going to happen here? If those Switch fans and PC fans have no intention of switching over, do you think that they're going to switch? No, they're not. They really are not. So what is, you can see right now they're in the complete denial phase. They are where Xbox was a year ago, or just over, a year and a half ago. It's taken them a while, but now they've entered that whole denial phase. And it's interesting to see just how far these people are willing to go. It's funny. Look at it. They just, no matter how much this guy tries, I mean, I'm pretty sure that William R. Aguilar is on, I mean, he must be on some form of payroll at this point. There's no way that you are going to do this much just to try and defend, Sony's integrity. He's clearly a PlayStation fan through and through, and he is in 100% denial. The fact that they're releasing their games on Switch and on PC, I mean, PC made them a third-party publisher anyway, but now they're releasing on Switch, and they keep saying the Switch now is not their competition. But just a few months ago, Switch was relevant, it was competition, because by their own terms, if you're buying a Switch, you're not buying a PlayStation. If you're playing games on Switch, you're not playing games on PlayStation, so that's competition. This is the words and the terminology that they were using, and yet now they are changing it and trying to manipulate it, somehow get out of this. Really, what they're doing right now is just fuck. I mean, the reality is they're coming out with all this bravado and they're coming out with all this kind of fight back, but internally, I don't know, folks. I am seeing the exact same thing that I saw happening with the whole transition with Xbox, which was really fast, by the way, now happening with PlayStation. Everything Sony has said, one by one, they are walking back on it, one by one. And even though it's a much slower process, which is why I originally said my prediction for day and date for PlayStation will be around 2028, maybe 27. But I think 28 I said was Nintendo. 27 is where I said for PlayStation. I think it's still on course. I mean, you might even land earlier. But we can clearly see that the trajectory that Sony has been going, they are seeing that the hardware business, though it does encase you inside, the ecosystem, it kind of entraps people to sell more consoles. Those hardware ain't cheap. And selling the software and getting that 70% return overall will more likely be a better net return than it would be if they didn't have the hardware. They are looking exactly at what Microsoft is doing. And I do believe that, watching what Microsoft are doing and the rumors now that the PlayStation 6 might be arriving in 2027, 2 years after they released the Pro, that's crazy, right? The PS4 Pro lasted 4 years. You releasing your console 2 years after the Pro released, that just means that you have no faith in the Pro. Or you are seeing what Microsoft is doing with the potential of Steam, Epic, and opening it up to other launchers and people actually showing interest, that you want in on that. And for all intents and purposes, Sony could go down that approach. But it'll be interesting to see what they do in reality. But one thing is for certain, PlayStation fans are absolutely...
You are coping and seething. You just can't accept what you're seeing. Yes, you're coping and seething. The truth it is scalding, and now you are molding and coping so hard.
Right, if you've made it through all of that, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate your viewership. If you've enjoyed the content, do hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell to stay up to date with all content I release. You can support me further through the super thanks or by becoming a YouTube member and getting content like this before anyone else for your own viewership. Right, hopefully I'll see you at the member stream tonight. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, folks, and remain legend. And PlayStation fans, don't worry. The stables are there to comfort you. Right, folks, I'm out. Remain legend.